and insight about how to make the most of this exciting new era. Learn more at InsideAnalysis.com.
InsideAnalysis.com.
And now, here's your host, Eric Kavanaugh.
Welcome to the future indeed, folks. It is time once again for the only coast-to-coast radio show in the U.S. of A. that is all about the information economy. It's called Inside Analysis. Yours truly, Eric Kavanaugh, here is your host. And today is going to be a really fun show. We're going to talk about winning in the new economies. That's right, the new economies. What do I mean by that? Well, we have the gig economy you've heard about. There's the sharing economy. There's the creator economy. So there are these new economies, which are really quite fascinating. They're whole new sets of disciplines that are allowing people to work in different ways. So think about Uber drivers, for example, as contractors. Think about all the folks who create content for YouTube and Instagram and all these other social media platforms. The gig economy, of course, refers to not just having one full-time job, but of having lots of little gigs that you get. Musicians know all about something like the gig economy. It's nothing new for those folks, but there are lots of new aspects of what we're dealing with in this world of ours that revolve around some of this cool stuff. So we're going to be talking to a couple of experts. Harold Sinnott, he is an industry analyst, a consultant, an all-around cool guy. I met him in Belgium just recently, which was a lot of fun. We've also got Tariq Mustafa on from a company called Gangor Cloud. So we'll talk to him as well. But maybe just some opening statements from you gentlemen. Harold, I look all around and I just see tremendous amounts of potential. And of course, underneath all these new job opportunities, there is a sort of strata, if you will, of technology. And the cloud is a huge part of that. There are big engines like YouTube, for example, and Twitter and various other Instagram, various other social media kind of posts that are enabling people not just to create content, but to monetize that content. Now, it's a bit of a black box, as I understand it, in terms of how much money you get. You just have to take what you get pretty much, and that seems to be the way it works. But nonetheless, that's very, very interesting stuff. So, Harold, tell us a bit about yourself and your role in the creator economy, in this sharing economy, and all the new fun stuff happening out there. Take it away.
Perfect. Thank you very much, and very happy. I'm very happy, and I'm so grateful for you to have me here. It's amazing. I mean, we were experimenting a lot of changes the last few years, and I also simulate how we reinvent ourselves a lot. And in my career, I started working in HR, human resources, in the global level. I had corporate responsibility, leadership responsibility, particularly for Latin America and also in the US. Hiring, training, development, and facilitating the implementation of new technologies. Change management is a big topic for me. I also work in supporting ERPs implementations as a change in my change management role in more than 10 countries. And that was a huge experience for me. And now sharing knowledge, learning and sharing knowledge on social media, particularly with my Twitter and LinkedIn account, about how all these changes we can, using technology, we can implement for building a better world for everyone.
Yeah, that's fantastic. What a great opening. And maybe we'll get a quick opening from Tariq Mustafa as well, and then I'll go into some depth with Harold. But Tariq, just introduce yourself. Tell us a bit about Gangor Cloud and how you're enabling these new economies.
Sure, Eric. Thank you very much for inviting me to your show. I'm the founder and chief executive officer of Gangor Cloud. We are headquartered in Silicon Valley, heart of the high-tech industry. And our focus at Gangor Cloud is data security and data compliance. Those are the two biggest issues right now in internet economy. Like you mentioned earlier, that internet economy, information economy has opened up a lot of different avenues for not only big corporations, but even an individual, independent entrepreneur or independent contractor to create their own content, for example, or to go to sites, where people post different opportunity to do different customized work, so that independent people can apply for those, like you said, gigs. It could be a musician, or it could be an independent software developer, one person. But everything revolves around security and compliance. So Gangor Cloud, actually, we have built what we call fourth generation data leak and exfiltration prevention solution. We are the pioneers in that space. And this is all about data security, information security, and compliance. So our flagship product line, which is called ICE Information Security Enforcer, we have been selling that product for about 5 years, and we have taken a large chunk of the market. Very advanced cybersecurity product, and it controls basically a very basic problem in cybersecurity, which is how to control mission critical information from being unauthorized way, from being distributed in an unauthorized fashion, and maintain the security of the content overall. Also, compliance issues such as CCPA, GDPR, and all of those kind of different compliance mandates which are sprouting all over the world now to control piracy, protection of intellectual property, and protect infrastructure from data infrastructure from cybersecurity attacks such as targeted advanced persistent threats and whatnot.
Okay, that's good. And as you were talking there, and I'll throw this over to Harold, and then maybe Tariq can comment on it. One of the reasons why the creator economy works so well and the gig economy is, again, because of the robustness of these platforms. When you think about what Uber has built, you think about what LinkedIn has built, what YouTube, those folks have built. These are incredibly sophisticated multi-tenant type solutions that can host hundreds of thousands of people, even I'm sure sometimes millions of people interacting at the same time and still remain viable. Well, the sort of flip side of that is they are very complex environments. The endpoints are everywhere. You now have to find ways to secure an environment and to govern an environment that is incredibly dynamic, that has, as I suggest, hundreds of thousands, even millions of people logging on, logging off, changing passwords, doing all this stuff all the time. That's a very unwieldy environment. And I'm pretty impressed with the job these folks do at keeping them secure and keeping them governed. But what do you think about that, Harold? Just the fact that the challenges are now at scale, just as the opportunities are, right?
Absolutely, because for so many countries that they are looking for opportunities to develop their economy, to have more employment, to have more investment in technology, in new business, to create new business opportunities in their country or also in their region, because we live in a very global environment in which whatever we do in one place affects the other. And the opportunity that we have nowadays to be talking from one place of the planet to the other just instantly, thanks to all information technology that we have available, the connectivity that is beginning, because we are still have a lot of development on the way that will help us to improve more of that. Now, we say that technology definitely have a huge role to support building these new economies in different countries. We talk in the US, we talk also Latin America, the Middle East, in Europe, with different contexts, with different situations. What we have in common, and we started to talk about the data management, we started to talk about cybersecurity. What we have in common is that we are streaming data constantly from different devices, from different locations. And we have there also huge opportunities, but also risk. A lot of risks that demand from us to make sure that we are in compliance with what can help us to create a more secure interconnection and also more secure environments for doing businesses.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you're exactly right. And maybe Tariq, I'll bring you back in here for a moment. The security space, I mean, the good news is the bad news is that it's never going to stop changing.
Right.
The good guys are going to have to keep working, and the bad guys never stop working. I mean, they're very clever these days with some of the tactics that they use. I mean, I get some of these phishing emails that are very sophisticated and look very real. And I get them on my phone all the time, too. So there are constantly these new attacks, these new threats. And on the security and the compliance side, again, it's very, very unwieldy. So I think it's important that organizations understand and appreciate that the stakes are higher today than they were 5 years ago. It seems to me things are getting significantly more complicated. And in order to stay afloat and to really do a good job, you need to be aware of what the opportunities are, what the threats are, and really how you can kind of protect yourself and protect your information assets. What do you think, Tariq?
Absolutely. See, what happened, Eric, is that internet is a great invention, probably the greatest invention over the last 100, at least 100 years. It opens up economic avenues for individuals as well as large corporations and everybody and everything in between. At the same time, it also opens up a lot of business opportunities, so to speak, for the bad guys. Now they have the opportunity to steal data, do intellectual property piracy, and all of those things, right? Including personal security as well has become a big issue because of the openness of the internet. See, what happened is that when internet was invented, we were not thinking about security as much. And we learned about security. Unfortunately, the bad guys, they are a few steps ahead of the guys who are trying to protect the data or the infrastructure and the people behind that. So, like you said, very smart people are in the habit of now, being the bad guy, launching attacks of all sort, not only against large corporations, but individuals as well, and harassing them over social media and whatnot, right? So security after the pandemic, for example, like Harold mentioned earlier, has become even much bigger an issue now, because working from home, the whole paradigm shift in workplace, working from home, remote conferencing, and all of those new work habits that have come to surface after the pandemic era. That has opened up new avenues for the bad guys to perform security violations, steal information, perform all kind of intellectual property violation and whatnot. So the industry started facing tremendous amount of gargation, problem with the, how to provide security over the internet. So new types of attacks are emerging every day. Like I said, from individuals, and these people are highly intelligent people and very determined to break the system, because that is, for many of them, this is their bread and butter now. So in a very convoluted way, internet has opened up business opportunities for them as well, right?
Yeah.
To steal information, to harass people and extort money and whatnot. And then there's another factor there which is coming into play, which is basically state-sponsored cyber attacks, basically cyber warfare, right? So this is becoming increasingly bigger and bigger problem for the defenders of the internet and the defenders of the intellectual property and data in general. So, and the problem is only going to become worse and worse. The technology which was built even to provide security, even though security was an afterthought, those technologies were barely holding before the pandemic era, barely. Now, after the pandemic, everything has pretty much gone, upside down. So there's a need for newer inventions at the very, very foundational technological level. And that's what we did in the context of Gangor Cloud, our product called ICE, Information Security Enforcer, where we have built, basically invented three core technological paradigms based upon artificial intelligence. And those three technologies working in synergy actually provide far better defense against those kind of security, attacks that we see right now.
Yeah, you've told me about some of these, and it's really quite fascinating. And maybe we should kind of pivot a bit to address artificial intelligence and how it plays a role, and machine learning in general too. Like if you look at the creator economy, what do you have? You have all these folks out there creating videos. Some of it is for kids, some is for adults, some is music. Any different domain you can imagine, there are going to be videos of people creating things. Some of them are just doing it for advertising, but some actually make a lot of money off this stuff. And I think the machine learning and the AI in the background is helpful for making recommendations. So someone watches videos by LD Shadow Lady, which my daughter watches all the time. She's a British creator who does
Uh-huh.
videos about games,
I
and
see.
it'll recommend other things based upon behavioral patterns that they've seen.
Mhm.
So these technologies are under the hood, and it's part of the stack that's enabling all this stuff. Harold, it's pretty important to have these recommendation engines underneath, and of course they track them, how well they work. We recommended this to 10 people, only 3 liked it. Maybe that model isn't working too well, right, Harold?
I think that something very important is to create conscience about this. I mean, to discuss this, to have discussions internally in the organizations. Before when we were talking about cybersecurity, about protecting data and networks, that was some kind of conversation that was limited to the IT department, to the
Right.
information technology guys. I mean, there was talking about, well, make sure that this is secure. We don't want to have any kind of virus or whatever. Now it's something that concerns every individual that is involved in an organization. Every individual that is also involved in this ecosystem that we are creating, in which we have partners, we have customers, we have all our suppliers that are helping us to get. We all need to be with this mindset of creating a new economy with the appropriate tools to be protected about, because cyber attacks is something that they are not going out. They're going to continue. They are improving. They're getting more sophisticated. The most
Mhm.
important thing is to be prepared for that. Most important thing is to have the right tools, the right support to make sure that this is not going to damage all the operations of an organization, of a company that is operating locally or internationally. So, and we need to be prepared for what can come in the near future in terms of cyber attacks.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's a really good point, and I think we all now know that this is going to be an ongoing battle between the protectors and the assaulters, if you will, the people who are kind of hacking into systems. But usually the basics will get you a long way, changing your password, for example. I mean, I do believe and hope that governments will do more to focus on this, because if you're a government, especially the US government, you have a tremendous amount of power, budget, technological awareness, understanding to address these things. But also from a collaborative perspective, I think we can do more. Now, I know in some industries, in banking, I believe, and some others, there is sharing of information about threats that are imminent or that come out and start disrupting systems. I think we should be seeing more of that, because collaboration, crowdsourcing. I mean, that's another aspect of these new economies, is the whole concept of crowdsourcing. And you see
Mhm.
that. I mean, you see that with open source technology, quite frankly, where you have committers who work on different projects and are employed by different companies, including competitors, all collaborating for the common good. And that's the direction we want to go, folks. But don't touch that dial. We'll be right back. You are listening to Inside Analysis.
What if you could own? Welcome back to Inside Analysis. Here's your host, Eric Kavanaugh.
All right, folks, take us to the future indeed. Your host here, Eric Kavanaugh, on Inside Analysis. We're talking today with my good buddy Harold Sinha and Tariq Mustafa, both experts in the information economy, and talking about the different kinds of economies out there. And we wanted to talk about compliance and some of these rules and regulations that are coming down the pike. And I want to do my classic positive spin routine on this, right? So we're hearing about GDPR and CCPA and how they are really putting companies on notice, especially big companies, 25 million and over of revenue, to be very careful with their data about like personally identifiable information. So your date, your birthday, your personal address, for example, phone numbers, your mother's maiden name, all this kind of fun stuff. And we're also talking about how big engines like Facebook and others will use your personal data to optimize their machine learning algorithms, which they then use for other purposes. So there's a big conversation right now across all sorts of industries about what is appropriate and about giving power back to the user. And that's really what GDPR and CCPA are all about, is getting big companies to be responsible and trying to help consumers and individuals regain control of their own information. Because if there's money to be made on my data, well, why aren't I making that money? So you're starting to see lots and lots of companies come out. We've had a guy from CrowdPoint Technologies on the show, Sean Brem. He's doing that. Lots of other companies are doing very, very similar things where they're trying to empower the end user. And here's my big idea, and I'll throw this over to Harold first and then Tariq. But I started thinking about how as companies, individual companies start to sort of understand and develop their policies around data sharing and data collaboration with their customers and their partners. One really cool way to do that and to encourage people to share their data and to give permission is to use the data they already have on us to give us some insights or some recommendations. I actually see this in a somewhat limited way from our energy company here in the North Hills of Pittsburgh, where they will show you your energy use last week, how that compares to other people, how that compares to your use the year before, for example. That's a pretty simple report to run. Now, of course, they have lots and lots of people who they're doing it for, but it's an early sign. And I think it's a straw in the wind for a way that companies can do a really good job of sharing data and helping their customers make better decisions. Because when you see the numbers and you can understand, oh, well, for some reason we use twice as much energy this month as we did last year, that helps change behavior. That's the whole point of data. That's the whole point of business intelligence, of analytics, is to change some behavior, either in yourself or in your company or in the marketplace. But Harold, I'll throw it over to you to kind of comment on that idea about a way to really foster better, more productive conversations between the data holders and the data providers. What do you think?
I totally agree on that, and I'm very supportive of that idea all the time, because when companies start thinking about their role, and the role changed a lot, particularly because of the pandemic, because all the reset that happened in the mind of a lot of people all over the world when thinking about their relationship with work. And we started experimenting a lot that scene of the great resignation, or the great job reset, where a lot of people were leaving their job, even when they still didn't have a new job, or not for a better paid job, but they were looking for quality of life, a better balance of work life and personal life. So working from home helped a lot of people to understand that and say, there is something that we were not paying attention that much, and that is that we can have a balance if we work at home or remotely or in a hybrid environment. All those things also created a lot of risk because, as we mentioned before, connectivity had improved, really, we had high volumes of data circulating all over, using a lot of devices that maybe were not still ready from a cybersecurity standpoint, but we were developing a lot with that. At the same time, there is a need that a lot of organizations, a lot of companies started to think about is, if we want to attract, retain, and develop people, employees in our organizations, we need to pay attention to those values that came from that, I would say, great resignation or job reset. Now, one of the things that sometimes we discuss with some companies is that how can we create that relationship? And there comes a discussion about the future of work. We are changing. I mean, everything is changing. The future of work is arriving. For me, is that it's just starting, and implies a lot of technological advances, a lot of new ways of thinking, and implies a lot of automation, a lot of jobs that are going to disappear, that are disappearing, and a lot of jobs that are still do not exist, but are going to exist shortly. So in this conversation with so many companies, we come to the point in which we say, what about if we share more data, more information about what we think is coming, what we think we are going to need in terms of job, labor, knowledge, skills. And I started doing something on my Twitter account, sharing some courses for developers, for people who want to learn new skills and to want to be in the new economy. They want to have a job, and they say, maybe I cannot go through to college or have a master's degree or a doctor or to a PhD, but I can have some skills that in the new economy are going to be used, particularly in the technology area. When we say about, and when I'm sorry, I want to get to the point. When I share this on my Twitter account, I get a lot of engagement. A lot of
Right.
people, followers or not, that they need this information. So for companies to engage more, organization who wants to engage more with the community in the local, regional, and global environment, sharing data information about what is coming and facilitating the retraining, reskilling, upskilling is, in my opinion, is definitely a double plus.
Yeah, no, I think you're exactly right. Upskilling is critical. And, I'm thinking to myself a couple different things about this, and I'll bring Tariq and Mustafa back in to kind of comment on this. But, there are so many new, interesting roles. There are so many ways to make little bits of money. And there are so many ways to, especially working remotely, and this is the future of work we're talking about, to carve out your day in different segments. So there's this traditional 9 to 5 work mentality, Monday through Friday, that has driven much of the world for quite a long time now, at least the last 100 years, probably longer, that we've had this sort of basic, we're working from this hour to this hour. And then, of course, there's jokes over the years like bankers' hours, which meant not very many hours, right? Inconvenient hours. A lot of that has changed over time. But my point is that now in the gig economy and the sharing economy and the creator economy, you don't have to abide by these old regimens. You don't have to abide by rush hour for an hour getting in, a rush hour for an hour getting back. If you're working from home, you could work 3 hours a day creating videos. You could work 2 hours a day at some local retail outlet. The point is you can cobble together a meaningful work life to get you the money that you need to do the things you want without having to abide by some of these old constraints, which really don't apply as much anymore, especially after the pandemic, during which we realized lots and lots of jobs that people said could not be done from home absolutely can be done from home. What do you think about that, Tariq?
Yeah, you are absolutely right. And like Carol also mentioned earlier, the internet has opened up tremendous opportunities for individuals, big corporations, small businesses, and everybody. And it's a great, wonderful thing. And like you said, pandemic has brought to light another aspect that telecommuting can become more prevalent.
Mm-hmm.
And all of those things, those are all very good things. Unfortunately, with opportunities come challenges as well, right? So data security is a very big challenge. It's only becoming worse and worse with this, remote working and things like that. So the IT guys, they are extremely overwhelmed with security problems.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And new ways of addressing those security issues are emerging and are being deployed. So that is an ongoing process which is going to continue, because the bad guys, like I said earlier as well, are determined, because that is their business opportunity with internet, information economy, right? There's the second aspect that you mentioned in your prelude to this segment, which is with security, there's a complementary aspect to this whole thing. One is security, obviously, to enable this openness, right? The other one is data compliance, which is also related to security as well. Empowering the consumer and the individual basically to decide what they want to be done with their data that is collected over the internet by social media, for example, as well as by business enterprises, big and small, right? So data sharing is very important in information economy. And with that comes these two things. It should be shared in a secure fashion, right? And it should be shared with the consent of all the parties who are involved in that particular piece of data or information. If I go to, let's suppose, any e-commerce site and I make certain purchases, okay, my data is collected there. It gets fed into the enterprise's business analytics, data sciences platform. And that is a major source of revenue for those e-commerce sites, because they do profiling of the customer behavior. And using that, they basically control their marketing efforts and all those things, right? Which is of great value to the vendor, and to the enterprise.
Mm-hmm.
So the thing is that then came the GDPR and CCPA style of compliance, excuse me, compliance, which actually gives some of the power back to the individuals Because what has happened is that another aspect of security and personal security gets involved there, is that somebody's personal information, PII, personally identifiable information, gets stolen from those enterprise databases, or gets sold purposefully as a normal business interaction, because companies also share information, right, amongst themselves, about their customers and whatnot. There's a major part of the business, further development of the business, and and whatnot. So there's one here, a little bit of stirring of the pot, if you will, Eric. Okay, if you allow me.
Uh-huh.
So all these big compliance mandates which have emerged, like GDP, you cannot do business with anybody in Europe unless you comply with GDPR.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And if you are a European business, you have to comply with GDPR. Similarly, in the United States, there are 32 states now which have similar kind of mandates for compliance. In California, we have CCPA, which has been enforced for about 3 years now, slightly more than 3 years. And pretty much most of the developed and developing countries in the world, they are coming up with a similar kind of compliance, especially the ones who deal with European and American businesses, right? Therein lies a bigger challenge vis-a-vis compliance aspect of security. What will happen is that when a consumer requests, which is called the data service request, DSR, that please delete my information, whatever data you have collected on me, because I went to your site, e-commerce site, and I purchased something. I gave you my first name, last name, PII information, PCI information, my credit card. Please delete all that information, or please don't sell it to any of your business partners. There, the enterprise, I'm surprised why it has not already happened, but it will happen soon. Okay. The enterprise has a counter argument. I spent billions of dollars in developing my business intelligence, business analytics infrastructure. I hired an army of data scientists. Now, Mr. Government, you're telling me to basically enforce GDPR or CCPA. That was a bigger, actually, segment of my revenue that I was generating through that intelligence. If every consumer starts asking me to delete their information, my billions of dollars of investment in business analytics is gone. So you will see that there is going to be a pushback from enterprise on these issues. And what will happen again is that the legal community, which has already become very active in this area, it is like, if you have been exposed to asbestos and you are suffering from those kind of things, right? And all kind of, there'll be class action lawsuits and all those kind of things. Oh, I asked why you use my data to develop your business intelligence, and you benefited from my data without my consent. Give me a certain percentage of your revenue. You see the point?
So, class action lawsuits.
Absolutely.
Like that.
And this is going to emerge, before we can say compliance.
I think, go ahead.
So we are going to see all kind of interesting, and these are all growing pains. I see it. So our new product that we launched 2 weeks ago, called CAPE, Compliance and Privacy Enforcer. This is our second product line at Gangor Cloud. Yes, and this actually empowers both the sides from technology perspective, the consumers to give their rights in requesting DSR, data service request, and very, very intelligently, the enterprise can also serve those DSR requests without losing their intelligence that they have created. This is a very unique technology, again, using artificial intelligence.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think you make a couple of really good points here, and I think we should pick that up for the roundtable discussion, because you're probably right that there will be some sort of pushback. I mean, I'm a little bit surprised there hasn't been so far. I think that basically these large corporations are sensing that there is a real desire to effect change by these government agencies. And there's also big fines involved. Right, so the governments make money when they fine them. But don't touch that dial, folks. We'll be right back. You were listening to Inside Analysis.
Welcome back to Inside Analysis. Here's your host, Eric Kavanaugh.
All right, folks, back here on Inside Analysis, talking all things new economies with Harold Sinon, an industry analyst and a smart guy. I met him in Belgium at a race just the other day. It was so much fun. And we have Tariq Mustafa online as well from Gangor Cloud. We're talking all things the new economies. So the sharing economy, the gig economy, the creator economy. There are lots of these economies out there, economies of scale. It's what they're basically leveraging, these economies of scale in particular domains, whether it's creation of content or sharing of devices, like you see with some of these car services and so forth. Lots of cool things going on. And when I think about GDPR and CCPA and this whole right to be forgotten, which many of you may have heard about, which basically says that in those environments in Europe, for example, you as a resident of the EU can send a letter to any large organization and tell them, I want you to get rid of all my data. I want you to find it and get rid of it. Pretty tall order, I have to say, for lots of reasons: data quality issues, data matching issues. Once your data winds up in a large corporation, according to traditional architectures, it typically gets copied time and time and time again. It winds up in 9 different places around the company. And guess what? Even the smartest person in that company probably can't find all 9 copies of your data. So it is a bit ambitious, I would say. And of course, there are going to be big fines. There have already been some pretty big fines levied by these organizations. And that's important to watch out for. But I would throw out a broader perspective and sort of an umbrella mantra for these organizations to embrace, which is the right to be respected. And that simply means that I, as a human being in this world, have a right to be respected by these large organizations, many of which are capturing my data, whether through apps or through my phone or through cameras or whatever. There are tons and tons of data collection objects out there, sensors just pulling information. When I drive down the highway and I go through the toll booth these days, it just reads my license plate automatically, and that data goes into some system somewhere. So I think that the broader picture here should be to really foster a greater appreciation in organizations for everyone's right to be respected. And if they do that, I think everything's going to work out just fine. But Harold, what are your thoughts on that?
I couldn't agree more with that, Eric, because the more we share, I mean, the more the risks are created. But mainly, we need to respect that individual right to protect your personal data. You don't. I mean, you still need to have control of what is shared in public, and in all the use of internet gives us the opportunity to share good information also, but should also consider these moral aspect that we need to give the opportunity to say, no, I don't want you to share more about me in these areas. I want you to forget somehow what you were sharing in the past about me. That means information that comes from when we were together, when we were doing something together, or very personal information that not necessarily needs to be out there. The other thing is that things are growing all the time, and the knowledge of technology for individuals all over the world are helping to create this new economy in which everybody is connected. Everybody can do payments, and we were discussing sometime what's happening in some countries, in countries in Africa, as an example, where it's very common to do payments using your phone, and that is maybe we will consider that a little bit insecure if you don't have the right software in your phones, but it's a very common practice. I mean, the people who are more in the informal economy sector, that means they are not in the system, they don't have a bank account, but they're doing business, they're doing transactions, payments through using their phone. So there are a lot of things to be considered.
Yeah, and you bring up a good point, and we didn't even talk about this at all, but the payments industry, we're going to have a series that we're launching here on Inside Analysis in a few weeks, all about fintech and advances in payments. And that's a really big deal. And frankly, maybe I'll just kind of tip that off here and throw a question over to Tariq Mustafa. As companies look to transform, and digital transformation is, of course, all the rage for good reason. We need to digitize our operations. We need to be able to monitor them, to optimize them. We need to be able to leverage artificial intelligence, machine learning. You can't do that in a paper-based system. Okay, folks, there's no AI that's going to help you with your paper-based systems. You need to digitize all that stuff, and the processes to document the processes, understand the processes, redesign them, et cetera. And one thing I'm noticing in my research around fintech here, and Tariq, I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on this. the storyline or the argument for allowing fintech to help you drive your transformation is very strong because it's focused on the money and the
Yes.
money that goes out the door, the money that comes in the door. Pretty important aspect of business where your money comes from and where it goes, as
Mhm.
opposed to sales and marketing, which also is very useful, HR, which also is very useful, operations, manufacturing, production, all very useful data, all needed in the big picture to understand how to optimize your company. But is there data that's more important than the financial data, and who's getting the money, when they're getting the money, what are they getting for the money, why are we paying these people? I think it's very interesting that fintech could really take the lead here in digital transformation. But what are your thoughts, Tariq?
No, absolutely, Eric. I mean, you have raised a very, very important point here, especially, with this Bitcoin and trying to have an alternate way of financial transactions.
Right.
Like, move, actually, some people are trying to move away from fiat currency
Yes,
altogether, right?
right. That's right.
That opens up a whole bunch of security issues as well as privacy issues. And in the context of the fintech, Eric, I was listening to this very important talk a couple of weeks ago, and somebody said in there that they actually collect the information how many times and how frequently does an individual let their cell phone go out of battery power, and use that information in profiling that particular person. And that profile is fed into the machine learning algorithm to basically create a bigger profile on that person as
Hmm.
to their eligibility to conduct certain transaction online or not.
Huh.
Can you believe
Interesting.
that? This
That's
is
crazy.
this is an epitome of what you said earlier, the right for self-respect, right? So the
Wow.
thing is that you just imagine what's going on. So what kind of data is being collected on an individual? The person should know about that, right?
Yeah.
And therefore, GDPR, CCP, these are actually very good initiatives. Of course, there is a counter argument to that as well. Everything needs to be done in a proper balance, right? But you're absolutely right. The right to be forgotten, the right for privacy, and the right for respect, personal respect is very important.
Hmm.
In olden days, I used to hear from my parents and grandparents that businesses, it was very important to them that they gain the confidence of their customers to
Yeah.
retain them, right?
Right.
And if you are going to, if a business is going to use a person's personal information that they are not even aware of, how are you going to build good relationship with the customer? There's always going to be a great deal of apprehension, watchful
Right.
eyes and things like that. So I'm absolutely a big proponent of what you mentioned earlier, the right to be respected. Okay.
Yeah, I think we should
And
do. I should do some sort of series about that, and maybe finally get serious and write my book. But there's one more observation based upon the story you just said right there, Harold. I'll throw this over to you very quickly. We got about 2 minutes left. I saw a video or it's sort of a graphic and animation online a couple years ago that showed the different kinds of phones, like a Samsung, an iPhone, and there was some other Android phone maybe, and it showed the data transmitting out of the phone like right after you got it and set it up without even downloading any apps or doing anything at all, and it showed which phones were sending the most information, and it was really quite interesting. I think it was the Android was sending a ton, the Samsung was sending a ton of information, the iPhone not nearly as much. But kind of to the point here of this conversation, shouldn't I be able to see like where information is going? Shouldn't that be one of the built-in
yes,
apps on the phone to show which apps are sharing information, how often, all that kind of stuff? What do you think? Real quick, Harold.
Very, very, very important thing that you're saying is absolutely correct. I mean, there is a lot of data, personal data that is shared without our knowledge, maybe, that still needs to be put under control. But here is the point: we need to create an environment. An environment is a company with individuals, and we can have confidence that we can create trust, and we can have all the respect that we were talking here in this conversation about protecting data, personal rights, and also, but again, with policies and rules of engagement.
Yeah, rules of engagement. I think that's right. I think we do need to have some very serious conversations about that, and I think it's starting to happen. I was mentioning in the break there that Uber Oh, these folks at Uber, I mean, from a leadership perspective, they were very, what's the word, bold? I would almost say rude and disrespectful of not just norms, but laws and regulations in their expansion. I mean, they just ran roughshod over people, and that's finally starting to come back. So I think we're going to have some good conversations, folks, in the near future about the right to be respected. Thank you for your time and respecting our time. We'll catch you next time. You've been listening to Inside Analysis.